Now we will try to make the recruiter's job easy. So to begin with, the chat, you can start off as a power user. So we get a different kinds of resumes. They could be in different formats for different profiles. Now, I'm sure in all of our companies, there is a recruiter, they would have this problem that with so many changing technologies, so many different roles, and so many different years of experience, it's extremely hard for a recruiter to understand just by looking at the profile what kind of skill sets that they need to get, what should they search for, how can they do the initial screening. All that becomes a stupendous task for them, and it's extremely hard for them. Even folks who are in the tech find it difficult. So what we do is, let's try to use ChatGPT to do this. To begin with, whenever a resume comes, let's assume that he is going to use the ChatGPT version 4 version. They copy the chat, the description of the job, and go over to ChatGPT, pick up version 4, okay, and you give the text over there. Now, then what you do is we give a simple prompt to say, based on the above information, give me the skills that is rated for it. Now we let the chat GPT do the work instead of that. And we can see that it is able to identify the different skills that is needed for based on the job profile and the resume. So the GPT model itself is able to figure out. Now we are not happy with that. We would say, can you, as a recruiter, I would also like to ask some basic questions to do some basic screening. Interview anyway is going to happen. So this kind of gives them a basic set of questions, which probably the recruiter can ask the candidate even before scheduling an interview. This is just to get a sense for what is happening. Now, this is as a text that he did it, right? Now, let's say the recruiter combines these things to make it into a prompt. So I'm kind of making it into a prompt to say, for a given job position, give me the skills that is needed to search for in a resume. The keywords which I'm going to use, let's say in a job portal or where resumes are there, what I can use to search for. And once I download the resumes from there, what is the kind of questions that I would like to do? So when I give the prompt itself, ChatGPT just said, hey, okay, you gave me the prompt, give me the actual data. So I'm actually doing a manual copy from the PDF that I have got, and I'm going to paste it into the GPT-4 model. Now, as soon as I have done that, what it does is it now in one single shot for a job description, it gives me all the skills that is needed. It gives me all the keywords that I can use to search for a resume in a portal. And not only that, it also helps me generate questions as a recruiter without knowing the technology. I could actually ask the questions to the candidates. This makes the life of a recruiter extremely easy. Now, does it mean that once I have these keywords or I have the questions, my job is done? Not quite. But compared to where the recruiters today stand, where they are completely clueless, this gives them a good start. So it is just like a doctor, right? It's not the final solution. They look at the question and answer which comes as sets, which makes it easy for them. They are where they were clueless. Now they are in a completely different world together. Now we're not happy with recruiter doing this every man. So why don't we try to do the same thing with using absolutely no code at all? So we go to make.com. It is one of those sites where you can assemble code. And for building many kind of applications, here I'm using it to build an AI application. So I start off with creating something called a hook. So what I'm going to create is two types of hooks I could create, either a mail hook or a web hook. But I prefer to choose a mail hook here because it's a lot more easier. So a mail hook is nothing but an email ID which is given as an endpoint by make.com. And if a mail comes to the particular endpoint, it can be sent as an email to the endpoint instead of calling an API, which becomes a lot more easier. Now, in the corporate world, instead of make.com, you could also use Power Automate. What I'm also going to do is, whenever the messages come, I'm going to create a channel within the teams such that whenever a job request comes, I would want it to come into the channel also. So I get real-time information of what's happening in the background. For this development purpose, I'm also kind of trying to use it as a debug tool so all of you can know what's happening under the code. Instead of doing a log, I'm actually sending whatever is happening to the channel. So to begin with, I'm just sending a simple message just to check if the Teams channel is working, to say whether a message came. Now that worked, very good. Now let me go ahead now, and I'm going to use open chat GPT, which is a node here, and I'm going to choose chat completion. There's another node which we will use later, and I use a GPT-4 model. Now here, the concept of roles and user, we need to be clear. So a system is where I give the prompt which we had used, and then after having given the system prompt, instead of the user typing in the job description, what I'm actually going to do is, from the incoming mail, the body has the job description. So I'm taking it from the email which came in a body, and I'm going to send it over to ChatGPT. Now, just to make sure that I'm getting requests from outside, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a message to the Teams channel based on the email that have come, that what is the subject of the email, which is usually the job description, who sent it, and their email ID. So as soon as a request comes in, a recruiter is sending it. So here I'm sending it to the email ID, which is in make.com. And as you can see, as soon as I sent it, a message in the team pops up telling, hey, we got a request for human resource assistant from kumaran@tinymagic.com. Now, when I go and look at the node that is executed, we can actually see that the chat GPT has processed it, and it has created the skills, keywords, and the questions in a format. So I've got all these things. What I would like to do is, this is the content that has happened from the email. Just to make sure that it is coming correctly, what I'm going to do is I will add whatever that came. I'll create another Teams channel, and whatever is the output that came, I'm going to push it into the Teams channel and call it as unstructured response. It is one big blob of data which has all the skills, questions, everything as one single thing, and I'm going to connect it to chat, and I'm going to send the mail again. The moment I send it again, I can actually see that the unstructured target now is visible in the Teams channel. It's good enough, but still it's too cumbersome for someone to read it. So what I'm going to do is, beyond sending it, I add something called a router in Mac, so I can send the thing to processing to happen. ChatGPT also has a thing called getting it to structured. This is the latest thing that has come, where you can convert it into a structured data. So that's a boon for me. So whatever data that came in an unstructured format, now I have created another prompt to say that make it into jobs is one parameter of a JSON node, and I give a description of what that node should be. Now GPT figures out from the content what is the title of the job, and I also give a structure for it. And the prompt basically was split it into title, keywords, and skills based on the content. So the unstructured data is the input to this OpenGPT. So I'm taking the output of one ChatGPT call to another. So now I'm defining one parameter after another, and I'm giving it this is a one-shot prompt that I'm giving to kind of say that in what format do I want the output to come. So I did the skills, the search, and for the QA. And for the question and answer, again, I'm kind of telling, give it to me. I give the structure of how I would want the data. The question is this, answer is this. This is a one-shot prompt which I'm actually making. Now I would send a mail again. And before I do that, I add another node to send a Teams message to say what's the structured data. And to make sure that I'm getting it right, I create a message which has title separately, skills separately, and the question and answers separately. Make.com makes it easier. As soon as it parses each of them, I get them as separate things. Literally, I drag and drop my results and format it with simple HTML for the Teams message that has to come, and that's it. And once now I go ahead and send another mail to the same email ID. This time, along with the non-structured, now I get the structured information very clearly. Now let's level it up further. This meant that till now, the recruiter has to keep looking at the Teams message channel to do it. But in an enterprise, I don't want that. So here I'm using a more persistent storage. I'm going to use a SharePoint list such that when the emails come in, they get processed, not only sends as team message, but also gets collected in a SharePoint list. So every request, a job description is created, and in that list, all the different items, the title, the keywords to search, the questions, all that actually gets stored in a persistent single database. Consider that as a JD repository which gets built automatically over time. Now, this is the beauty of it. Is it knowledge management? Is the organization growing? Yes, it is. Now, interestingly, I also say who requested for the job and what were the questions. Now, what's the beauty of this? Once an email gets sent, all the things which we said now happens. In addition, the final output also gets captured in a SharePoint list. As you can see, the job title, from whom it sent, what were the keywords, and the different question and answers that needs to be asked also gets stored into the SharePoint list. Now, the beauty of this is there is a basic set working. Now, let's say somebody comes and they find that a better question is there. The basic structure to create knowledge management is already there. Email to list happens automatically. Now, somebody could actually manually also add additional information into the SharePoint list as an expert.